And as always, let us start this meeting by raising our consciousness, invoking that principle which is in, within, and without everyone, everything, which connects us all together. O hidden life, vibrant in every atom. O hidden life, shining in every creature. O hidden love, embracing all in oneness. May each who feels himself as one with thee know he is also one with every other. Hello and welcome back again. And today, as we know, the Indian section has been organizing the weekly online study meetings, and in that series, we are going to have a talk and followed by any question and answers on chapter 9 of the Key to Theosophy, Life After Death. And it is my great pleasure to introduce the speaker for today, Brother N C KRISHNA, whom I personally met many years ago and have been meeting in different places like Adyar, Varanasi, and Bhavali on different occasions. And he is a classic example of how, when somebody, a person, is introduced to something called theosophy at an early age, not just by lectures or discussions or study, but by a real life example, by an individual who's putting theosophy in practice, that makes so deep impact on the young brain or mind of the child that such person grows to be an automatic, or let's say a theosophist by default, and that carries on for the rest of his life. That's what we can say, in other words, giving sanskaras. And that is why I say that, because Brother N C KRISHNA joined the Theosophical Society when he was just 16 years old. And although he is a qualified chartered accountant professionally and has worked in that field for quite some time, and he settled in Hyderabad with his family. But what he points out is that he owes everything to his maternal grandfather, who, by his example, inspired him to join the Theosophical Society. And that is what I am talking about, that when a person is influenced by such real life ideals, then that leaves the impression for the rest of their life. And without any further ado, I would like to request to Brother N C KRISHNA to enlighten us and inspire us with his very interesting way of speaking and share with us the subject life after death. Brother Krishna.
Good morning. Thank you, Brother Sikharji and other dear brothers who are present on this online session. We're going to consider the life after death as given in the chapter 9 of the book, The Key to Theosophy. As an introduction to what we're going to study, let us consider the following lines which have been taken from the expanded version of The Key to Theosophy, published by Theosophy Publishing Company, London. And as an introduction to the whole thing, how this death takes place and all that, there are certain lines which we'll consider. The book says there are 7 principles in man, and what happens when death occurs to these 7 principles? So the answer says like this: the lower 3 principles leave him forever. The lower 3 principles leave him forever. Meaning the physical body, which is cast away, and the life principle or the prana tattva that goes back to the original source or the universal tank, and the body which housed the prana tattva, the etheric double, that also passes away or falls away. So these 3 principles, they leave forever from the person who dies. Then the astral body and the lower manas and the higher triad, which we call as Atma, Buddhi, Manas. When we say Atma, Buddhi, Manas, all the time we talk about the higher Manas. These start living in the astral plane. When we say plane, it is not a locality or it's not a particular area we're talking about, but it's just an arrangement of the ultimate. To understand, we call it a plane. In fact, Theosophy says these planes are interpenetrating. So all the beings which lived on earth, whether it is men, animals, or other beings, after their death, they take the astral form and start living in the astral plane. This astral plane, we're not able to see with our physical eyes, but there are people who have the astral vision. There are people who are able to see the details of the astral plane. For example, Brother Edbita, who wrote the book or wrote the manual on the astral plane. Maybe there are quite a few others like Dr. Fritz Kunz and so many others who perhaps can see what's happening at the astral plane, right? So it's not visible to us, but few people have endowed with the skill of seeing what is happening at the astral level. And these astral forms also fade out or they suffer the second death. So they go through the second death. We call it the second death because first it has happened at the physical level. Second, after the whole astral body, all the habits, desires, all those die away, the astral body of a person also dies, right? So after that, the lower manas also disintegrates. Lower manas is attached to the astral body, and that also gets disintegrated, and then the Atma Buddhi Manas, this gets separated and starts living in the Devachanic plane. Devachanic plane, some people call it paradise, some people call it Swarga, whatever it is, it's not a locality as we have already talked about. A plane, it's a state, it's a state. So that's where the Atma Buddhi Manas starts living. And now we come to our study as per the chapter number 9, which is given in the book edited by Madam Clara Cott. And I have done one thing, I'm submitting this for your consideration. Sometimes the questions even run to 2 paragraphs. So I have summarized the questions and also picked up the salient features of the answer. We only to quickly go through the chapter so that we can have time maybe for discussion if people are interested in discussing all these aspects. So now we move to the chapter number 9. And the first question which was put across is how long the reincarnating ego, Atma Buddhi Manas, lives in Devachanic plane. How long? What period of time it means? How long the reincarnating ego, Atma Buddhimanas, lives in Devachanic plane? The reply given by the author, Madam Blavatsky, is that it depends on the degree of spirituality with which he lives, the degree of spirituality with which he lived, and the merits and demerits of his previous just concluded life or reincarnation. So depends on these two, what sort of interest he had in spiritual living, what sort of degree he practiced in the spiritual living, and the merits and demerits of the just concluded life or reincarnation, as we may call it. There are two ways of living just to satisfy the body and the urges of the body, etc. This is living by the body. And if someone has lived in consonance with spirit, if someone has lived in consonance with spirit, that is perhaps leading a spiritual life, and that person perhaps has a long duration in the Devachanic plane. He earns that eligibility, he has the time which he can spend in the Devachanic plane. He has a good period because he has lived in consonance with the spirit and perhaps has lived the right kind of life. This is more important to underline and understand. Life led with unselfish motives. Life led with unselfish motives. Loving others like he loves himself. These qualities will enable a person to spend good time in the Devachanic plane. Again, as we said while talking about the astral plane, Devachanic plane is not a destination, as we see the advertisements which come in the Hindu paper, the obituary and all that, where they say so and so went to Sivaloka, or so and so went to Vaikuntha, things like that. So this is not a destination, but it's a state. It's a place. Not even, we can't call it a place, it's a state. He raises his consciousness to that state. So the average time, specifically answering the question, Madam says, the average time which a person spends in the Devachanic plane ranges between 10 to 15 centuries. Ranges between 10 to 15 centuries. There can be exceptions to the general rule, because a lot of people immediately will pounce and say so and so came back almost immediately, and my mother came back immediately to live as a daughter or a granddaughter in our family. Things like that we have heard. So there could be exceptions to this general rule, but what Madam says is, for an ordinary person, normally the rule by which this stay in the Devachanic plane is determined is based on a period which ranges between 10 to 15 centuries. This is what the book says. So next question. Why this ego? Every time ego means we're talking about those three aspects, the Atma, Buddhi, Manas. Why it will not manifest itself after death? This question is, after death, why it will not manifest itself on earth as spiritualists believe it does? Spiritualists believe the spirit comes back, and so they get into the practice of inviting spirits, talking to the spirits, spending a lot of time posing questions to the spirits, etc. We know all that. So, like they believe, like the spiritualists believe, why this ego will not take a shape or manifest itself on earth and spend time with people who are staying behind or living on earth. So, to this, the reply is, people who are guided by spiritualists, people who take seriously the explanation or the theory that the spiritualists are putting up, they're living in an imaginary world. We have to pick between fact and fiction, says Madam. We have to pick between fact and fiction. So this is a figment of imagination of the spiritualist, that the spirit comes back to stay or to spend time with the people who are living behind or on earth. So it's not possible, according to theosophy, that the spirit will manifest itself and come down and spend time with the people who are living on earth. So it doesn't happen that way, according to theosophy. And HBB further adds that the Devchanic state is a state where the ego goes through a period or time of enjoying bliss. Maybe as long as it extends, it is an unending period of bliss. So if that be so, no sorrow, not even a trace of sorrow can be possible to affect that particular ego which is living in the Devchanic plane. So it's not possible that it would suffer from pain or suffering. So if it is true that the spirit comes back to live or to spend time with the people who are living on earth, it is still exposed to all the vagaries of living on the earth, all the sufferings of the earth, all the problems of people who are living on the earth. So that would give her or give that person who is an ego now a lot of pain and suffering. So that was not the object of raising oneself to the consciousness or to the state of Devchanic plane. So if the ego manifests and comes down to see the happenings on earth, how can there be bliss for that ego? So bliss is a state where there are no tears, no suffering, no pain. Bliss is a state where there are no tears, no suffering, no pain. So ego is spending time, Atma Buddhi Manas is spending time in Devchan with qualities like love and other noble feelings. That's what Madam Blavatsky says. What are other noble feelings? Like, for example, compassion and maybe helpfulness and things like that. Life continues, he says. The person or the ego which is living in Devchan doesn't at all experience something has ended and something has started. It's a continuation. The life continues, but with a difference. What is the difference? For example, a loving mother in her higher consciousness, maybe living in the Devchanic state, has very deep love for her children. Though disembodied, meaning though she doesn't have a body, though disembodied, that mother who is living in the higher consciousness has very deep love for her kith and kin, not only children, for kith and kin. The spiritualists believe differently, and their book uses an expressions nolens and volens, a Latin expression, nolens and volens, meaning which suggests whether one likes it or not. Nolens and volens means whether a person likes it or not. The person who is dead has to experience by coming down, manifesting, experience pain, though after death he is living in a higher state of consciousness. So there is no ending of realization or getting connected to the lower life as per the spiritualists. So this is the problem with which they live. So Dev Chan, HPB says, she further explains, if the mother who died, suppose this is possible that the mother can come down and see and all that. HPB gives an example. Suppose the mother sees that the husband has taken another woman as his wife. This is exactly the example given in the book. And that new lady is not treating the children well, can the mother who passed away live happily, live in bliss? Is it possible? If that coming back is possible. So this is what Madam says. It's not possible for her to realize what's happening on the ground or on the people or for the people who are living on the earth. So she says, the higher consciousness, the Atma Buddhi Manas, lives in a state of bliss. So it cannot witness the suffering. If that is something, then we cannot call that state as a state of bliss. So Theosophy doesn't subscribe to this theory which is believed by the spiritualists. While in Devchan, while living in Devchan, ego is completely oblivious of the fact and doesn't remember what gave pain, what gave suffering to her while she was living on earth. So that's something very a great feeling, because what gave her pain, what gave her suffering, she will not be able to remember after she has moved to the higher consciousness. That's what the book says. While living in Devchan, ego is oblivious of the fact what gave pain or sorrow to the person when that person lived on earth. So this is something which is giving the special qualities or special aspects of Devchan play. This arrangement is an ideal arrangement, and it is as per the merciful law of nature. Madam says, this arrangement is an ideal arrangement and it is as per the merciful law of nature, says Madam Blavatsky. It's not a figment of imagination, says Madam Blavatsky. So no pure spirit on death will see or witness all the sufferings of the previous incarnation. This is a good consoling information we have. In death, Madam Blavatsky says, we might have lost the material body or the physical body, but the person who passed away is nearer to the people whom she has left behind or whom he has left behind in spirit, and that staying closer to them in spirit is better than living in flesh. Means while he was living on earth, the amount of attention he might have given is different than when somebody has passed off to the higher state and he lives in spirit, or he, with the spirit, he starts helping people who are living on the earth. So, though people have passed away, we don't have the material form or body, and we are told the person is much closer to the kith and kin now in spirit than while he was with flesh. So these are the wonderful words which Madam Blavatsky has put in the book. HPP says, pure divine life has its roots in eternity. Pure divine life has its roots in eternity and does not blossom in the human heart. So it's not the human heart which gives the permanency, the eternity. It is the pure divine life that gives or that has its roots in eternity. So when we love someone purely, without any expectations whatsoever, we are in touch with that eternity. When we love someone purely without any expectations, we are in touch with that eternity. You can call it God or that which is eternal, that principle which is eternal. So HPB says, spiritual holy love is immortal. And another comforting statement she's giving, sooner or later, with the help of the karma, sooner or later, this brings all those who loved each other and had spiritual love for each other, they incarnate together again. So this is something very interesting which is there in the book. helped by karma, sooner or later, those people who had this spiritual holy love which is immortal, they come together again in their next incarnations. They incarnate together in the same family, in the same family. That's what the book says. A mother's love, if it is spiritual, if it is spiritual love, continues to benefit her children, though the mother has no physical body. Children also will feel, will be able to feel the spiritual love in so many ways as a shield or protection which they always recognize. HPP says love is a strong shield. Love is a strong shield and is not limited by, it is not limited by space or time. This is a wonderful statement. Love is a strong shield, kavacha, and is not limited by space or time. The selfish love dies with the body. The selfish love, the love which is selfish, dies with the body. The book further says that there could be exceptional circumstances when the spirit could come and talk to the people who are living on earth. There could be exceptions. That's always there. In general, after the second death in astral and after this ego has separated and about to get separated, the ego spends time in a dazed condition, in a bewildered condition, and falls into pre-Devchanic unconsciousness. This is what Madam Blavatsky is saying. So before it goes to the next stage, there is a stage of daze and bewilderment where the ego spends time or in a state of pre-Devchanic unconsciousness. So that's something which we have to note. Answering another question, how intelligence can survive after death. Answering another question, how intelligence can survive after death. The author gives answer by quoting the spiritualist Mr. M.A. Oxon, who was one of the well-informed spiritualists, says Madame Blavatsky. And he says, intelligence continues though the body is dead. It is not related to the brain. Intelligence continues though the body is dead. It is not related to the brain. The human spirit or consciousness is not destructible. The human spirit or consciousness is not destructible. There were three propositions which he stated by Oxon in the year 1884, that there is life independent of the physical life of the body, which means there is life after death. Second, it means life extends beyond life of the body. Theosophists say life extends throughout Devchan. Even Devchan, you don't feel that you're dead. So that's another thing. And that there is communication, between living and those living in that state, the higher state, even though body is not there. Life continues in a state of consciousness. This is what M.A. Oxon had given, and Madame Blavatsky has quoted that. Key to Theosophy, the book, and HPP says that there are two distinct things, the spirit and the soul. Soul relates to the individuality, the monad, Atma Buddhi Manas. So it relates to that ego, whereas the spirit, the body consciousness, is related to the personality. Both are not same, says Madame Blavatsky. Hence, Theosophy says no spirit, the thing which is living after death, will revisit. No spirit which is, according to this book, related to body conscious spirit, will not revisit earth, but personality living in astral can come back. Personality, astral is part of personality. So the personality which lives in astral can come back to earth. So can visit the earth. This is the statement made, but the higher principle cannot come back. That's what Madame Blavatsky is saying. HPP says, vasanas appear while the ego takes a reincarnation, when the ego takes a reincarnation. Ego is also affected by the law of karma. And for the good deeds done, the law rewards. And for the misdeeds, also that there is something which he has to do to set off the imbalance created by him. So ego pays back its debt. That's what the book says. Ego pays back its debt for all misdeeds of the past life in the new incarnation. The new incarnation, he has to pay for the previous misdeeds. For some, this may look odd as to why the ego should suffer for the misdeeds of the personality. But we have to remember, ego is one which is evolving and moving towards perfection. And to reach perfection, what is that we aim? The ego should not even have a trace of the past karma. To reach perfection, the ego should not even have a trace of the past karma. He should become a clean slate, then he becomes perfect. So, this being the case, this is what happens. He pays for his good, he pays for his misdeeds and gets reward for his good deeds. Right. The stock of misdeeds, when the paying back of the debt takes place, is related to the personality of the previous life. And the previous personality is destroyed, but the ego continues. So the ego has to pay for the previous mistakes of the personality, the karmic effects of the previous life. And she talks about skandhas or impressions or attributes get attached to the new incarnated being. See, a question was there whether all these previous qualities continue. The qualities die, but the vasanas continue. That's what she says. So the new ego will get the vasanas or impressions or skandhas, and this happens through the law of karma. Good faculties also are developed in the person's new incarnation, or let me put it this way, good faculties developed in the previous incarnation are given scope for further development in the new incarnation. So the new incarnation will be given all the facilities like suitable body, suitable circumstances, and everything is provided so that the new incarnation can develop, enhance the faculties which it had learned in the previous life. HPB says maybe the faculty is something related to music or poetry or ability to speak or whatever. It can be perfected in the next life. HPB says that the doctrine of reincarnation has not its equal on earth. It's the supreme law. The doctrine of reincarnation has not its equal on earth. Ego moves from its existing state to a state of perfection. Ego is the dispenser of justice because it decides and shapes its future destiny. Because if you do good things happen to you. If you do misdeeds, of course, misdeeds. So the ego is the thing which is actually working. It's not somebody who is sitting there and deciding what you should face. HPP, while answering a question, says Christianity believes that salvation is possible and is granted only to those people who believe the presence of a miraculous savior. This is what they believe. A person who doesn't believe in that miraculous savior or the presence of a miraculous savior is doomed. That's what they say. But theosophy says the person has to strive through personal exertion. It is not somebody who is going to save you. Theosophy says the person has to strive through personal exertion, and then he is enabled to elevate himself to the state of perfection or to the state of the spiritual soul, which is also called the buddhi, where the faculty is intuition. So in fact, there is no cruel agency which dispenses justice or punishment. There is no cruel agency which dispenses justice or punishment. These are all the facts which are there. These are all contents which are there in not only Christianity, maybe it's also there in the Hindu old books. So there is no cruel agency which dispenses justice or punishment. It's man who dispenses for himself the reward of punishment based on his previous life or lives. Okay. So we've been told that the previous qualities like our previous faculties like music and poetry and painting gets enhanced, and Devchan is an ideal place to develop those faculties. In fact, another book says in Devchan you may have a group which will discuss poetry. You may have a group which will discuss maybe theosophy. So this is just what I'm saying because I'm extending this. So people who believe in bhajans, they will have a group. So Devchan is a place where you have groups for each of these faculties, right? In a way, Devchanic state is an extension of the physical life. So the person living in Devchan will never say that he is not living. We don't feel as if we are dead. Devchanic state is also a place of a state where the particular principle of Atma Buddhi Manas has earned the well-deserved rest for the toils of physical life which it took in the previous incarnation. So HPP says, those who believe that consciousness is not there after death, spiritualists believe in that. And those people who believe consciousness is not there, they spend time as if they are in a coma, as if they are in a coma. So they are not aware of the state of bliss, but they spend the time, say for 10 centuries or 15 centuries in a state of coma because they don't believe that there is life after death. So if people who believe that there is life after death, there is a process by which they can live the life of bliss. Right. HPP says, setting right of imbalance or punishment of the ego for the misdeeds done in the previous life or suffered in the new incarnation. This has already been seen. But again, another question, while answering another question, this was given. Hence, death is a friend. Hence, death is a friend, and that which delivers us to a better state. What is that better state? We move towards perfection. Life in Devchan will be as vivid, as clear as we see in the physical. This is also interesting. Devchan will be as vivid and as clear as physical life, where we are able to note all the small details, and full of realistic bliss and divine visions. We are consciously in a blissful state. We are consciously in a blissful state while living in Devchan. HPP will answering another question says, every man, even when the death is sudden, sees the entire gamut of what happened in his life. So he will not find fault when the lords of karma says, this is all what you have gone through, and perhaps this is what you have to face in the next incarnation. Similarly, waking up from Devchan or taking a new life, the ego starts taking a new incarnation. It has a prospective vision of what the life is going to be. So what it awaits in the new incarnation also is explained. But when you come down, perhaps you forget that vision and start behaving normally. So also the causes are explained why this life, why this new incarnation is required. HPP says, some people are endowed with the faculty of recollecting their past lives. Some people are endowed with the faculty of recollecting their past lives. They calls them Samha Sambuddhasya. People who are initiates. People who are initiates, they're able to recollect his past lives. And another place she says, if we can get in touch with Atma Buddhi Manas, if a person who is living on earth can get in touch with Atma Buddhi Manas, we can remember all the past lives. So this is the possibility which is there, but how many people will be able to get in touch with the Atma Buddhi Manas is the question. HPP says the ego gets or receives what it deserves. Ego dresses up in new garments. Ego dresses up in new garments which are different than the previous ones and hence called a new life. Ego and the spiritual I is eternal and immortal. The spiritual pilgrim, this is a word which he has used, the spiritual pilgrim is eternal. He is striving for perfection, and on reaching perfection, the spiritual ego, the spiritual ego called as pilgrim. Some people call it as monad, the spark of the divine. Elsewhere, in secret doctrine, she called this unit as pilgrim, and it goes on coming and going, various incarnations. So the pilgrim, as described by HPB, becomes a divine being. He becomes a divine being. He graduates into a divine being. Archangel is the word used in the book. Jnani Buddha is the state. Or who is a Jnani Buddha? He is a contemplative, enlightened, divine being. So every human being who has come into this earth, when he reaches perfection, when there is no trace of anything on his slate, he becomes a Jnani Buddha, an angel. So that's the purpose. We're all gods in making, as we understand, or gods in exile, as one book says. So this is what is the goal for all men. Spiritual ego takes so many incarnations like an actor. Spiritual ego takes so many incarnations like an actor who dons various roles. This is an example she given in that article about reincarnation also. Actor is same, but roles are different. Actor is same. So he wears various roles, or actor dons various roles. Man becomes thus a glorified, godly being or a Jnani Buddha. So this is where I have ended the presentation of life after death. And yes, there could be questions or there could be discussion on what we have studied. I have, as told in the beginning, summarized the questions also, because if the question is too long, I've taken only the core question. Similarly, the answer had too many examples. I only taken the core content of the subject content, because the subject has to be covered in 45 minutes. So I have done that. So I hope you permit me to do that. Right.
Thank you, Brother Krishna.
And this is the thing. These are the habits. These are various things which would determine the life in the astral plane. So one understands the nature of desire. One understands the nature of desire and is able to distance himself from the desire, drop the desire. No longer the desire attracts him. Perhaps that way, living on earth, you keep on reducing the time which you will spend in the astral plane. If you don't do that process while living in the physical, and you transfer yourself all these desires, all these habits which you have formed, all the number of times you repeated the experience, well, it takes a lot of time in the astral plane to work out all this. So the best time we have is now, here in the physical plane, where perhaps we can work on this and get freedom onwards.
Thank you, Brother Krishna. Yeah, very rightly said, depending on the life that we lead here will depend upon our stay on the astral plane. But in case we suppose, can we have like some range of years that we normally, a person, like a worst case scenario, and the best case scenario is the person just passes through if he has overcome all the desires, so no stay in astral plane. worst case maybe many years or immediate
Let me
reincarnation.
say somewhere, brother, let me to say somewhere, 700 years for an average man. Let me to say 700 years for an average man who has led an ordinary life. So, as you said, someone who has dropped all that, maybe he touches like, the hopping flight. I'm coming back from Varanasi. It stops somewhere in Nagpur and then comes to Hyderabad. So that's a hopping flight. For me, as still, if I have dropped all the desires, it will be a hopping flight like thing.
Okay. Thank you, Brother Krishna, and thank you, Sister Vinita, for putting up that question. Anybody else who wants to ask any question or have any query, or please, you are most welcome to ask, because this is a very great opportunity for us of the subject and the learned speaker that we have among us. So if no one has the question, then we'll proceed to closing of the meeting. And
A lot of people might ask about Sutratma.
Sutratma, yes.
Yeah, a lot of people, because I have purposefully avoided certain getting into the details. See, the Sutratma is something which is referred to in the Hindu scriptures, right?
Yes.
So it is got no bearing elsewhere. But Sutratma is a particular term which is referred to in the Hindu scriptures. So the Sutratma is a combination or a term equivalent to ego. Ego is a principle which has this Atma Buddhi Manas. Sutratma is a term which is equivalent to ego, the principle. So it is the one which takes repeated births, which is the principle. Sutratma is the principle which takes repeated births. It is synonymous of the reincarnating ego.
Yeah, so it is like, it acts like a sutra, the thread on which
Yes.
different personalities are
all these three are sewed together.
sutra.
Atma Buddhi Manas are sewed together.
Okay. Thank you, Sister Sheet.
ये आप बात करते हो हिंदी में पूछ सकती हूँ ना?
हाँ, yes, आप हिंदी में पूछ सकती हैं जी.
मेरा क्वेश्चन लग सकता है.
I will translate, sir, no problem.
Yeah.
लग सकता है, लेकिन फिर भी मेरा क्वेश्चन है वो, इसलिए मैं पूछ रही हूँ कि विनीता कलरा जी ने जो बोला, तो उसके कंटिन्यूएशन में मैं कहना चाहूंगी कि अगर किसी को, जैसे कृष्ण साहब ने बोला कि खाने का किसी को यह है, तो उन्होंने कहा नहीं खाना चाहिए करके, लेकिन इसमें जनरली ऐसा होता है कि जो जिन्हें टेस्टी फूड होते हैं उन्हें बनाना भी अच्छा लगता है, खिलाना अच्छा लगता है, खुद को जो बना दिया तो क्या
बहुत सॉरी शीतल जी, सम इंटरफेरेंस इज कमिंग, आपकी आवाज क्लियर नहीं आ रही है. आपने कहा कि जिसको खाना अच्छा लगता है उसको खिलाना भी अच्छा लगता है, बनाना भी अच्छा लगता है, एंड आफ्टर दैट
मिताहारी बना भी लिया, फूड से थोड़ा सा क्या वो बनाने से भी कलरा ने, सुनीता ने जो इफेक्ट पूछा या पीसी कृष्णा जी ने बताया, तो वो इफेक्ट वैसे ही कायम रहता है क्या?
कि जिस आपका कहने का मत क्वेश्चन है कि जिसको खिलाना अच्छा लगता है, कुकिंग अच्छी लगती है,
हाँ,
और तो उसको भी क्या ये इफेक्ट करेगा, जैसा विनीता जी ने पूछा. ओके सर,
Yes, I've understood.
Okay.
Yeah. See, when we cook and give food for somebody, we're doing with a lot of love, right? बहुत ज्यादा प्रेम से हम कर रहे हैं वो काम, जो खिलाना है, जो guest has come home, so we're taking care of him. So that is not included because there is a lot of love in it. There is a lot of giving in it. So that is not something which is associated with your life in astral. But something which I have developed, which I want to keep on enjoying, repeating, perhaps that is something which will affect me. But this giving of food, especially cooking food with a lot of love, cooking food with a lot of love, expecting all the people who eat this food will be very comfortable, very happy, very healthy. So this will give you a lot of good karma. This will give you a lot of good karma. No doubt about it. If you are a very good cook, and while cooking, even though it's a drudgery, as some people say, you do it every day, even on a Sunday, right? So when you do that with a lot of love, my husband should enjoy it, my children should love it, my granddaughter should love it. So if you do it that way, and if that is adding a lot of love into that food, a lot of love is flowing into that food, and that becomes a good deed, good karma, which would reward you in the long run. So that's not a disqualification, it's a good qualification.
Okay, thank you, Brother Krishna ji, for your clarification. Anybody else who wants to ask anything? Okay, if nobody is there, Brother Anil Kumar Barua ji, you want to ask something? Okay, no. Okay, so there are no more questions. So we'll proceed to for the closing of. Please go ahead.
Actually, because actually this so monad is it's a ray of God, and it comes down. Actually, this process of coming down, whether it is mandatory or why it has come down, because suppose it doesn't come down, we do not pass through all the problems and all. Why it comes down? Then ego.
Okay, you got the question, I guess, sir. Okay.
We'll have to talk about the story of creation, and maybe the entire thing is explained only through that. And see, the ultimate, we call him the capital God, capital G, God. He wanted to multiply. He wanted to multiply, and so he created a lot of forms, right? So while creating the form, certain elements which are permanent, certain elements which will disappear. Those that combination had come. So this monad, which is spark of the divine, the undivided spark, as some people call it, monad means the combination of Atma Buddhi Manas, which is called ego in some places. Monadic essence is another term which we normally see. Monad is the spark of the divine. This has come out of the universal self, that godly figure. You don't call it a figure because it's not having any hands and legs and things like that. From that power, this has come down. Why it has come down? Having come down, it has to go through the pilgrimage. That's what the book says. The pilgrimage is something which is not optional but obligatory. It's obligatory. You have to go through the process till such time you become as perfect as the person who created that small unit, and then you get back to that original source. So this is the process. Why it happens? Because all this is process of growth, evolving, and the evolution of the individual soul, which has happened. Individuality has happened how? It is moved from the group soul to the individualized soul. And the Pranatattva went into all these elementary kingdoms, and you had the mineral, you had the vegetable, you had the animal, and then from the group soul, the individualization has taken place. So individualization having taken place, it has got this Atma Buddhi Manas, and also the four elements which will get destroyed all the time, or which will escape from the body all the time. So these three Atma Buddhi Manas, which are called the permanent factors, which are called the ego or the monad, this is the process of individualization, starting living, gathering experiences, until such time one gathers the experience to such an extent where there is perfection per se, where it becomes a clean slate, as we have said in the presentation. There is no trace of karma there. And till that time, he keeps coming. he keeps coming. That's the process. It's an obligatory journey in secret doctrine.
Yeah, thank you, sir. And that's the proposition, fundamental proposition that we'll hear. You are in the evening today again.
We'll talk about the believing. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right.
And well, just one last question we have is, if two members of the family expires in a short interval of time, do they have any connection on the astral plane?
Yeah, they may see each other. They may see each other there also. Whether they would be able to recognize them and all that is a different question. But it's possible. Yes, both of them have died in short intervals. Both reach a destination, and that's a huge plane again. So we do not know which part of the plane we go to. Whether the other person who lived before me has gone to a different plane or different state in the different places in the plane, or I go to a different place in the plane. It depends on what I have done. So yes, there is a possibility of meeting. There's also a possibility of getting lost.
Thank you. And we have Professor Shie Shindeji, who has switched on his video. Do you want to say something, sir?
No, I must thank N C KRISHNA for explaining nicely whatever
Okay.
life after death, and also congratulate him.
Thank
And
you.
one more, Krishnaji, we can add, like the bonnet comes down and why it comes down and why it goes up. Instead of that, we can, one more possibility, we can tell them, there is a cyclic process. There is no coming down and coming up. It is a cyclic process that we have accepted as the cyclic evolution. That is a recent one which are believing there is no coming down and going up. There is no like that. These are the possibilities which we speak of. I
Yes,
think that
that's
is what he has explained very nicely. Thank you. Thank you.
that's perhaps what she said. Pilgrimage. Pilgrimage. There's no question of coming down and going up.
Yes.
Pilgrimage is a pilgrimage. Just keep moving. Keep moving.
Yeah.
That's
The
it. That's
ending
all.
is end is the beginning.
Yeah, you know. See, there could be an end where absolute perfection has been reached. Yes, there could be getting back and staying. Even the state of Jnani Buddha, I don't think they keep coming down every time. They don't. Only when there is an opportunity or direction given, maybe they come down. Otherwise, they don't have to come.
Thank you so much, Professor Shinde. And so now I don't see any more queries or people wishing to ask, and it's already time. So let us proceed to the closure of today's meeting. And first of all, on behalf of the Indian section, on behalf of all the delegates, and on my personal behalf, we would like to thank today's speaker, Brother N C KRISHNA, for sharing with us his study on the subject life after death in such a lucid manner, and making it possible for us to understand. Thank you so much. I would like to thank all the delegates who took out time and joined this meeting and participated in an interactive manner. And now in the end, I request everyone to join us to say a will prayer for the welfare of all beings in this manifestation, especially for their spiritual upliftment. Although everybody is going through a difficult time at present, but instead of just asking for physical welfare, as HPB says, we should always aspire for spiritual upliftment that will include everything in it. So let us come together, put all our thought power and willpower together for the welfare of all beings, and say this mantra either in your mind or with your voice. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah Sarve Santu Niramaya सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत्। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति। Thank you once again, everyone, for joining.
Thank you all.
And now I request Brother Pradeep Mahapatra to, if he has any announcement or to end the meeting.
I must congratulate you and Brother N C KRISHNA ji for his very powerful explanation on life after death. Our next speaker is Dr. Mansi at 10:30 next coming Sunday. With these words, I congratulate all the participants for their joining. With these words, I am closing the meeting. Thank you. Thanks to everyone.
Thank you.